Good afternoon, everybody. As a candidate for president, I pledge to bring the war in Iraq to a responsible end, for the sake of our national security and to strengthen American leadership around the world. After taking office, I announced a new strategy that would end our combat mission in Iraq and remove all of our troops by the end of 2011. As Commander-in-Chief, ensuring the success of this strategy has been one of my highest national security priorities. Last year, I announced the end to our combat mission in Iraq, and to date, we've removed more than 100,000 troops. Iraqis have taken full responsibility for their country's security. A few hours ago, I spoke with Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki. I reaffirmed that the United States keeps its commitments. He spoke of the determination of the Iraqi people to forge their own future. We are in full agreement about how to move forward. So, today, I can report that, as promised, the rest of our troops in Iraq will come home by the end of the year. After nearly 9 years, America's war in Iraq will be over.
Alert now, Iraq on the verge of total collapse as terrorists capture city after city, now reportedly setting their sights on Baghdad, threatening to wipe away all the years of hard-fought gains made by U.S. forces, the sacrifice that was left there.
We are also learning Iraq's prime minister reached out to the White House for help. According to the New York Times, Nouri al-Maliki asked the Obama administration to consider airstrikes against extremist staging areas, but those requests were reportedly denied.
The speed of the jihadis' advance has shocked the Iraqi government and its Western allies. This is the road to Tikrit, the town ISIS has now seized by some accounts. ISIS called it a blessed invasion. We will not stop, they say. All this after the prize of Mosul fell into the jihadis' hands. Their black flag now flies over Iraq's second city with 2 million people. These tanks have been burnt, and Mosul is now under our control, says an ISIS fighter. An ISIS propaganda video seeks to explain such breathtaking gains. An ambush. The targets are said to be soldiers returning from leave. It's a brutally efficient campaign that has sown terror among government supporters. We can't show much of what's on this video. The jihadis even have their own checkpoints. They have lists with the names of the security forces and officials. In this way, ISIS has been steadily tightening their grip in the north and west of Iraq. A terrified man is led away to be killed.
So who are the fighters of ISIS? They're a Sunni Muslim jihadist group, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, formed a year ago and pledging to create an Islamic State across Iraq, Syria and neighbouring countries. They have strongholds in significant parts of northern Syria too, including Azaz, Raqqa and Abu Kamal, where Westerners, including some British Muslims, have trained and fought with them. It's all helping to increase ISIS power in Iraq. They took Fallujah 5 months ago, now they have Mosul and appear to have taken the city of Tikrit as well. But their ambitions go far wider, to create a Muslim caliphate, a single Islamic state, to include not just Jordan and the Palestinian territories, but Israel too, and much of North Africa, if jihad makes progress there as well. This is their leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, seen as a brilliant commander and tactician, battle-hardened since joining the Iraqi insurgency after the US-led invasion a decade ago. All this is now ringing alarm bells among world leaders.
Meanwhile, yesterday marked the definitive end of the Gaddafi regime in Libya. And there too, our military played a critical role in shaping a situation on the ground in which the Libyan people can build their own future. Today, NATO is working to bring this successful mission to a close.
Reuters saying that there was a secret order signed by the president, an order authorizing the assistance covert U.S. government support for rebel forces in Libya, and only moments ago, the New York Times reporting that the CIA is now in Libya aiding rebel forces who are fighting Muammar Gaddafi.
The unrest in Syria continues. Western media say foreign militants have joined armed gangs in the fight against the government. News outlets AFP and CNN say dozens of insurgents have entered Syrian territory from several Arab countries. They're now at the Bab al-Hawa border crossing with Turkey. They say the militants are from Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Libya, and other Arab nations.
And as the violence in Syria continues unabated, neighboring Lebanon has seized a shipment of smuggled weapons destined for Syrian rebels. The sea-bound cash apparently came from Libya, which is backing the opponents of President Assad.
This latest seizure of arms may be a major development in this uprising in Syria and what lies ahead. For this reason, there is now an eyewitness today, Hassan Diab, who saw that ship, the Luftwaffe 2, flying a Sierra Leone flag, loaded in Benghazi. We know that Qatar and the Saudis have 5 warehouses that they control in the area of Benghazi, left over from arms that they shipped to Libya. The great suspicion is that these are arms that were left over from Libya. The craft was loaded there. There was to be 15 containers, but it turned out there were only, in fact, 3 that were filled with 150 tons of weapons. That ship went from Tripoli to Turkey, back to down to Egypt, and then to Libya.
Well, yeah, Bill, we have now learned that the United States is in fact helping those Syrian rebels in ways not previously disclosed. President Obama reportedly signed a secret order directing the CIA and other agencies to help them. That order does not allow the U.S. to provide weapons to the rebel fighters, who have been seriously outmatched as they battle President Assad's forces.
The Obama administration said it would begin increasing military assistance to the Syrian opposition.
Across that country, President Obama signs a secret order directing the CIA and other agencies to provide covert support to the opposition forces there.
President Obama has quietly directed our intelligence agencies to provide some support to the Syrian opposition forces. It could be a risky move, since some of our allies in the region are claiming that they are 100% sure Al-Qaeda has infiltrated these rebel ranks.
This amateur video appears to show one fighter holding an advanced shoulder-fired missile, presumably an SA-7. As of yet, none of these surface-to-air missiles has brought down any Syrian planes or helicopters. A senior U.S. official tells Fox that President Obama has signed what is known as a finding directing the CIA and other agencies to provide support to the Syrian opposition fighters. The CIA declined to comment.
This is a very graphic video of Commander Abu Sakar. He is in this video. He has just killed a Syrian military member. This is a rebel that is now cutting the chest open of that Syrian. He takes out his liver and his heart. And to show you what's going to happen to all of his enemies, the commander eats it. The dead soldier on the ground is the enemy of the guy we are now arming. This president and the Republicans, it's the Democrats and the Republicans, the progressives, trust this demented terrorist with weapons.
Turn now to that surprise mission to Syria for Senator John McCain. He secretly crossed the border into the war zone yesterday to meet with rebels trying to overthrow the Assad regime and build support for arming those fighters. ABC's John Carl has the details from Washington. John, this comes as Europe is lining up behind McCain's campaign for more military aid to the rebels.
That's right, George. The European Union has now lifted its arms embargo on Syria. That is the first step towards getting heavy European weapons to the Syrian rebels. McCain crossed over that border with Turkey in great secrecy. He met directly with the top Syrian rebels to make the point that they deserve all the support the United States can give. And George, this was with such secrecy that not even his daughter knew that he was going.
You are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith.
The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria are Sunni Muslims in a country where the majority are rival Shiites. ISIS now occupies territory stretching from northern Syria to northern Iraq and took Iraq's second largest city, Mosul, last week. ISIS now threatens Samarra, believed to be the birthplace of its leader.
Well, Jim, ISIS appear to be moving south towards Baghdad, but their current focus is the city of Samarra, which they have reportedly almost completely surrounded. And this is home to one of the holiest Shiite shrines. When this country was consumed by sectarian bloodletting in 2006, it was actually triggered by an attack on that very same Samarra shrine.
The New York Times article refers to multiple requests by Iraq for U.S. airstrikes, but they were turned down by the White House. Now, the Iraqis felt that the staging areas where the insurgents were gathering would make easy targets for unmanned drones, but you're not so sure.
Well, no, the staging areas in advance would have been excellent targets for drones or for manned aircraft, for cruise missiles. But the Obama administration just doesn't want to do anything militarily in Iraq, no matter what the price is. I mean, Patty Ann, this is President Obama's real legacy. The creation of the first jihadi state in modern history, stretching from central Syria to central Iraq and now approaching Baghdad, all because President Obama saw everything through a political lens. He's going to end the war in Iraq, refused to negotiate seriously for residual U.S. presence. And now, just to put this in perspective for viewers, with this jihadi conquest of Mosul and jihadi forces approaching Baghdad, this is shaping up to be the biggest Arab jihadi victory since the 12th century, 1187, and the fall of Crusader Jerusalem.
Wow.
This is momentous. I can't overstate the importance. So, Obama's jihadi state in the heart of the Middle East. If you're a jihadi fighter, an Islamist militant, you believe in your cause and are willing to die for it. The Iraqi military isn't willing to do that, and in fact, when the jihadis capture Iraqi officers, they cut off their heads and often don't bother to use a very sharp knife. And ISIS, which you'll also hear called ISIL, the ISIL, depends on how you translate it. It's Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. This is an even grimmer, more brutal force in Al-Qaeda. It's son of Al-Qaeda on steroids. And as I pointed out years ago, a decade ago, with Osama bin Laden, I said, what if Osama bin Laden isn't the terrorist messiah? What if he's just John the Baptist?
Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth.
The 12th Imam and the Mahdi is understood by Ahmadinejad and also the nut jobs at the top of the Muslim Brotherhood. Same basic guy, right?
There's a difference with regard to how they emerge onto the world scene, but once they arrive, they're essentially the same individual.
The 12ers believe it's the 7-year-old. Is he going to come back as a 7-year-old, or does it matter?
I believe he comes back as an adult.
As an adult, okay. And the Mahdi is not the 7-year-old for the Muslim Brotherhood, but he does the same things.
He's an individual that comes back and just emerges out of humanity in order to elevate the Islamic world, to bring the Islamic world together and cause Islam to be victorious throughout the earth.
Let's start with chaos. Why would anyone want chaos?
According to Islamic tradition, it is out of chaos that their Messiah, the Mahdi, would emerge onto the world scene.
Okay. Both stories have the beheadings of people in it, right?
Right.
Okay.
The Bible says that the method whereby the Antichrist would kill his enemies, Jews and Christians, is through beheading. And then, interestingly enough, it's Islam. It's actually in the Quran. It says, strike the necks of the infidels. Some translations say, behead the infidels. Okay. Islam has this rich tradition of beheading their enemies. Essentially, the method that they believe that they can hasten the return of the Mahdi is to attempt to carry out the things that he will do. So they're pushing for the unification of the Islamic world. And some of these radicals believe that by initiating global chaos, that they can force the hand of Allah, force the hand of God to make the Mahdi emerge.
So the best case scenario is he means that by saying, I want a global caliphate.
Best case scenario, and in the midst of that, we have to consider the fact that you cannot separate that from the destruction of the state of Israel and the Jewish people.
Okay.